What's up, everybody? It's Alex once again with the EOT Newsflash. Do something a little different since there's only Justin and I today, and I felt like recording this. We're recording this, so you get to watch us.
For some reason.
Make complete fools of ourselves.
Will definitely happen.
Yeah, that's going to happen. If you see me looking off kind of that direction, that's not me just kind of like giving you side eye, it's me looking at the other screen.
It's really hard not to look at the screen that's closer to us. So when I suggested something crazy, like moving the camera to the other screen, Alex just slid it over a little
Oh,
bit.
you want the camera over here?
Yeah, since this is the screen that's closest to us.
I mean...
Yeah.
Oh, shit, that works too.
Yeah, this is what
we have this nice ethereal gaze behind us, too. Oh, okay, alright.
I'm feeling mysterious now.
I don't know, mysterious. You're pretty,
okay.
You're pretty basic white. Alright, okay, that actually looks pretty good then. Alright. So, anyway, this is episode 49, going for gold!
Olympics, yay.
Yeah, the Olympics, the Pro Tour, gold status, new gold Planeswalkers to talk about tonight. So there's reasons for the title, and I think the Rio logo looks kind of sweet, so deal with it.
Yay, Brazil, and, political statement insert here.
Well, it's not like once we get to deal with I think it's the 2020 World Cup being held in Iran, I think.
Oh boy.
We're not gonna get into that right now. John Oliver handles all of my political commentary I listen to. But anyway, so over the weekend we had a Pro Tour. That's what the notes say, at least. Pro Tour. We're gonna break it down and talk about it a little bit. There were some sweet decks, some expected decks, and I would say that the overall winner was not expected. I don't think. So,
I was very surprised
yes.
about it, personally.
Before we jump into that, you played in regionals this weekend, didn't you?
Yep, I did.
Now, is play a very strong word?
Well, I went 4-4. I underestimated Spell Queller. I kind of had my own brew of red-white humans, and against the original Collected Company, I had a very, very favorable matchup. I rarely lost it with my particular build. However, Spell Queller took that match from something I was very comfortable with, maybe lost one in every 5 rounds, to playing it 6 times that day and beating it once.
So what I'm hearing is that you didn't actually test against the new version of Bant Company.
I didn't have an opportunity to. The only person that had it was a relatively new player, so I played against him a couple times, but testing against a new player is not testing, so no.
That's the feeling I usually get when I test against Justin. Anyway. Come on, there has to be some interaction here.
Yeah.
So, 4-4. Mm-hmm. Friend of the show who's been on before, Mr. Hal Brady, took second place with a wacky 4 and technically 4.5 color emerge deck. Pretty super sweet.
The thing's sweet.
Yeah. Matt Dimitruk, who's been on the show once before, is a friend of Sean's. Topping it as well with Mono Blue Eldrazi, which is super cool. Let's get you off the side of the... There we go. Alright. We're better.
Will Barlin's deck's worth mentioning too.
Yeah, what did he know?
He was
took
on
third, didn't he?
Did he make third?
Okay.
I can't remember what he made, but he was on Red Blue Eldrazi, and just watching him time walk people over and over again with Elder Deep Fiend, and then following Elder Deep Fiend by an Ulamog to exile 2 things. No, it was ridiculous.
Super crazy. Mm-hmm. Super crazy. I don't know who actually took first place. I didn't recognize the name. But of course, when you have a thing like regionals, and you've only got, I think, 5 places in the entire country to actually play regionals at, you've got a lot of people coming in from outside areas. It kind of sucks because Jameson over at Common Grounds Games was originally supposed to host regionals this year. But some scheduling things came up, so it ended up going to Madness, which is where it's been every year.
That thing was a huge mess. Because when I first heard about regionals, it was supposed to be hosted within QuakeCon.
That's what it was.
At the Hilton Anatole.
Yep.
And then it was going to be hosted at Common Grounds.
Right.
And then after Common Grounds, it went over to Madness. So I was, up until like the day before, I was kind of like, not sure where I'm supposed to go.
Yeah, one of the crazy things I actually heard from the regionals itself was that people were showing up the morning of and buying decks.
Really?
Yeah. So
decks, not like cards for their deck.
Well, like the rest of the pieces for decks.
Okay.
And this is the great thing about having it something as a pro tour, specifically one on the other side of the world, in that you've got enough of a time delay that if you stayed up late enough and watched the coverage of the pro tour, you could see the top 8. And so what I understand people are sort of doing is, I think Todd Stevens, who's a local player to DFW, you might see from the SCG circuit, and a couple of like his guys actually showed up and just bought the rest of the pieces to the top 8 decks, which is, it's a perfectly viable thing to do. You're going to pay a heavy premium for that, but greatness at any cost, right?
You know what? My wallet disagrees there.
Well, disposable income aside, when you've got it, you've got it. So
very true.
So yeah, let's actually talk about those pro tour decks. You enjoyed the time at regionals.
I did. Until the very last few rounds, I really enjoyed it.
Then what happened?
Well, I played against Coco a bunch of times in a row.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Sore spot.
Yeah, no, I was doing pretty good at the beginning of the day, and then just for whatever reason, it was just like Coco. Can we stop this, please? Coco. Oh, okay.
Like kind of like my time at the SCG Open, most recently here in DFW. It was all the weird decks. Amulet, or not Amulet, but Lantern Control, Dredge, Black-Green Infect, all the random things you don't expect to see that you don't really test for, and then you're like, well...
I mean, like, Bant Coco is not exactly a weird deck. I did see one weird iteration of it, which was Blue-White Spirits splashing green for Coco.
Oh yeah, that was proposed by Jeff Hoogland at the first weekend that Moon was actually legal for it, though. So
yeah, so I did see that one, but for the most part, the Bant Coco lists that I was encountering were, turn 2,
like
Sylvan Advocate, turn 3, save mana and spell queller, whatever you do that turn.
So they looked kind of like that.
Yeah, exactly like that list.
Well, let's look at the Pro Tour list here. So we're going to start with the first place list here, and big shout out to our buddy David Palmer, who was actually in Sydney for the Pro Tour. He played there. Unfortunately, missed day 2. I'm hoping to get him on at some point for him to talk about what it's like to actually play the Pro Tour, because it looked sick from his photographs that he took. Yeah. But yeah, so right from the get-go, let's talk about Lucas Blohan, whose Black-White control deck won the whole damn thing. Now, here's the crazy thing about his top 8. Obviously, now it's best of 5 games. The first 2 are unsideboarded, the last 3 are sideboarded. It's best of 5, essentially. His first round opponent was against, I believe it was Ken Yukihiro. And apparently, the red-green matchup for the Black-White control deck is so appalling, they just knew sitting down, you're going to lose the first 2 games, and you have to win 3 sideboard games back to back to back. And he did. And then he went on a 6-0 run. Like, he finished his top 8 and the whole thing at 9-0. Like, he didn't lose a game from then on.
That's impressive.
Yeah, so let's break his deck down real quick here. We're not going to go over every card, but we're just going to go down, the heavy hitters, obviously. So, lots of Planeswalkers. This was a weekend for Liliana. Like, her price spiked to $45.
She's at 50 now, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, is she? Well,
yeah.
If you don't have them, get them now, and then, well, it's another Jace. I'm thinking it's just another Jace effect here.
I don't know. Part of me thinks that it's capped and it's going to drop because generally speaking right now, the top 3 decks from people that I've talked to are To Merge,
Let's look into that one.
Black Green Delirium, and Bant Coco.
Yeah.
And so out of those 3 decks, only one of them runs Liliana. So unless white-black control picks up popularity, which I'm sure it will with the first place run.
Oh, yeah.
There is only one deck that people really consider competitive running it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've seen the black-white angel control lists from the SCG Opens that have been putting up the numbers, so I think, Liliana is good enough to see continued play. It's probably capped, you're probably right, but this was her coming out party, essentially. I saw her ultimate so many times on camera. I'm going to try and see if I can make this. There she is. All right. So, yeah, just ultimated over and over, and seeing her go off, her ultimate go off in a game is just, you just can't beat it. You just can't beat her ultimate. It's absurd.
You really can't. Once that thing goes off, I mean,
yeah.
Just, at worst, 2 zombies?
Yeah, 2 zombies a turn, and if you've got a Kalitas in play, it just ticks up and up and up. There was the blue-black zombie deck that was doing pretty well on the feature matches that was just making a million zombies, so...
Oh, yeah.
Lily, I love the fact that we got to see, Liliana fight Emrakul. I mean, the story that WotC has developed for us, that R&D kind of crafted, played out at this Pro Tour, and that's so neat.
Yeah. And
it's great because the last time this happened, we saw something that was this, iconic, I guess, was when Miracles won the Pro Tour, Absent Restored.
Oh, that's...
Yeah, the Miracle deck won the freaking... And it was a miracle that John Pickle let Alexander Hayne win that match. Never mind. That's a different story. So Planeswalkers Abound, Liliana's, Obnixilis, Sorin's, Kalitas, Avacyn Archangel, and Vala. Super tech in the main board, Double Hallowed Moonlight.
Oh, no, I totally get it. When you're going into a Pro Tour expecting 50% of the players you're playing against to be running either A, green-white tokens, or
which
B...
didn't exist at this Pro Tour. It's dead.
Yeah. I mean, more importantly, Bant Coco.
Yeah.
But also, with tokens having the Secure the Waste, and White Weenies sometimes runs that in their sideboard.
Sure.
So, there was definitely a reason to have that card, and at worst, it's 2 mana draw a card.
Yeah, but we haven't seen this in any white deck in the main board. This has been sideboard tech through and through up until this point, and I think Lucas just nailed it on the head. It's just this is a card that's going to end things for my opponents, and he had it it's awesome. Languishes, Ruinous Paths, all kinds of removal, more fun things in the sideboard. Infinite Obliteration is a card that I have talked to a lot of people, saying was kind of the saving grace when the Eldrazi first came into play in Battle Block. But now it just seems like almost a waste of time because a lot of these decks that are running Emrakuls, they just coax it. And it's a completely moot point now to even run this card.
Yeah.
But I can still understand that there are some cards you just have to get rid of. So I totally understand why he's running it.
I think the only lists that are running Coax are the actual ramp decks. And a lot of Emrakul, like the Temerge deck, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they're running Coax in the main.
Well, we can look here in a second. But big props to Lucas Blohan for playing. I would never have guessed that this was going to win the Pro Tour. This is such a...
I wouldn't have put money on it.
Yeah, I wouldn't have either. This is just so outside the norm. We haven't had a control deck win a Pro Tour in a really long time. But anyway, yeah, I would have bet on some kind of Emrakul deck or a company deck winning the whole thing. But let's talk about an Emrakul deck here, and this is Temur Emerge, aptly called Temerge, in the hands of Owen Turtenwald, who also inducted to the Hall of Fame this weekend, which is super sweet. He's pretty much established himself as probably one of the best players in the world, if not ever, right up there with Kai Bude and John Finkel. Also, Yuya Watanabe made the Hall of Fame this weekend as well. Super cool. Here's Temur Emerge. Temerge. I can't reach my mouse.
And I am seeing that they do have Coax in the 75.
Yeah.
But it is in the sideboard.
Yeah. So if your opponent brings in the obliterations, then you can bring it in, which is it's just a super sick way to kind of get back in the game. But I love how streamlined these decks are. It's just Emrakuls and Elder Deep Fiends. There's all the decent emerge things, like Pilgrim's Eye.
Yeah.
That's nuts. Fix my mana and then make it a giant octopus later.
No, that was great. At regionals, a lot of the Emerge decks, instead of running Pilgrim's Eye, were running Sky Spawner, which has a similar effect.
Yeah.
However, instead of fixing your mana, you get a guy you can sacrifice for 1.
Yeah, I think it's...
I think Pilgrim Eye is better.
Really. Yeah, it definitely is. It's drawing you a card, effectively. And these decks are running 11 basics. Like, that's huge.
Yeah, very basic land setup.
Yeah.
It was very surprising. I mean, like, they could have had plenty of other land options in these colors.
But when your decks are running this Pilgrimage and as your major ramp, like, you need it to be basics.
That's true.
And that's what I love so much about these ramp decks, is that they're so linear. Like, I've never been a real big fan about ramp decks, specifically back when we had just super cheap 2-mana ramp like Farseek and Rampant Growth in the format. When you're just ramping into Primeval Titan, you take some more time to get to your targets now, fortunately.
A lot of these ramp decks are more interactive because it's not durdle, big guy.
That's also true, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of these ramp decks, they're built with either removal or some form of counter magic, so that you're not just sitting there uselessly for 5 turns praying that you survive.
Yeah. Well, I mean...
I am exaggerating a little bit.
Like, those old school... Like, I can still remember the days of turn 2 Rampant Growth, turn 3 Solemn Simulacrum, turn 4 Primeval Titan. And, like, game over. And, like, I was never a huge fan of those. But I love the cards that, like, we're running Vassal of Nascency. Like, Corrupted Graphstone. So weird to be running these cards. Grapple of the Past is a card that was not on my radar at all going into this Pro Tour. But after watching the pros use it, like, this is a card tailor-made for pros to play with. Like, it's
You really didn't think this card was good?
No.
I mean,
I wrote this card off immediately.
Really?
Yeah.
I really liked it when I saw it. I just wasn't playing green.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Corpse Churn, but better.
Right. Like, I think part of my analysis was that I didn't think a deck like this was going to show up at the Pro Tour. I knew Emrakul was good.
Yeah.
I didn't think we were going to see it in these ramp decks, so these dedicated hardcore ramp decks. But it's so good. Like, it's always drawing you a card. It's always good to, like, and then when you draw it, it is perfect to draw at any time. And it's awesome.
Yeah.
I like that you can't actually activate Ishkanah's ability.
Yeah.
Which is kind of hysterical, but
you're going to hit Delirium with this deck.
Yeah, well, you can't activate its ability to actually make it
no.
brain for life.
I'm saying, like, the reason you play this card isn't that ability. It's the 3 little baby spiders.
Yeah, absolutely, which is buys all the time in the world. And then be able to have Cosmic Return just dump in the graveyard naturally from Grapple of the Past, and then play Elder Deep Fiend and wipe your opponent's board.
Now, I think the biggest surprise with this deck for me was the Vessel of
Nascency?
Yeah, Nascency. Yeah. I mean, it's a fantastic limited card. Anytime I see that card in limited, I draft it and I'm on the Delirium plan. But I've just, that card is in my opinion, very slow for standard, and I was proven wrong.
Yeah, I mean, when your top end is Emrakul, like, and like I said, let's say this is a breakout weekend for Emrakul. The player that plays Emrakul first will win the game in most cases. And if you want to get to Emrakul first, you play cards like Vessel of Nascency, you play Grapple of the Past, you play Gap of the Pack and Pilgrimage. I love this deck, and like, I watched Owen Turnwald play this deck a whole lot over the weekend when I could watch the coverage. Awesome watching him play. Like, he knew what he was doing every time. And I will say that, kind of going to the point about the people who are showing up to regionals and just buying decks, the best thing they had going for them, because usually if I were walking into a tournament and be like, okay, I'm just going to buy a deck, I don't even know what I'm playing, a lot of these decks have a relatively linear game plan and not a lot of actual play to them. It's just ramp spells and big creatures. Like, I'm not saying that they're bad, like, they're simple decks, I'm just saying that it's a relatively simple game plan. But never will I, accuse a player of being simple with what they're playing. So next we had Sam Pardee, this is his first Pro Tour top 8. Everybody else in this top 8 has had at least one Pro Tour top 8 and has won a Grand Prix. Like, super stacked.
No, this is the deck that I think I'm going to switch to.
Okay.
From Red White Humans, since it doesn't seem like there's a place in Standard for that list anymore.
I would agree with that.
But yeah, I mean, I think Grim Flayer's sweet.
Yep.
Liliana is insane, as we've talked about in depth already.
Yep.
Tons of removal, which sounds like a good way to deal with, both Bant Coco and to merge.
Yep.
So
this deck's just sick.
Yeah.
and it's all just
it's fast too.
There's nothing tricky about it. It's just dudes and guys, and sometimes that's just cool magic.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is just simple. Activate Delirium, get my Grim Players down, and then cast Armor Cool at some point.
Yeah, I was gonna say
cool.
we once again top end at Emrakul.
Yeah. And now I did have some conversations with some players Monday night. I went to actually go draft, and the question of which is better? Do you want to play green-red ramp decks, or do you want to play this black-green? So there's red-green Delirium ramp or black-green Delirium, and which of the versions would you rather play right now?
Well, there's black-green Delirium and there's black-green ramp.
Well, we're not seeing that though. Like if we're just looking at the Pro Tour decks specifically,
there was at least on top 8 they call it that. On MTG top 8 they call one of the lists black-green ramp.
That's probably this because there's not actually another black-green ramp deck from the top 8.
No, it was a different one.
Oh, well.
I'm pulling it up now on my phone.
Yeah, so I don't know
because there's no ramp in that whatsoever.
Right, this is just a Delirium enabler deck, and so that was the question people were asking. Do you want to play black-green ramp or do you want to play red-green ramp? And I think it's just red-green every time because of the interaction between Grapple with the Past and Kozilek's Return, and
on
then cast.
Flip
and then
side, Gitrog Monster's a scary beast.
Well, there's no Gitrog Monster in this.
Not in that list, but yeah. See, we've got it's called Delirium Ramp, but so we're talking about Samuel Parday's Golgari Delirium.
Yeah. And
then in 5th or 8th place, Reed Duke. His is called Delirium Ramp.
Yeah, it's red green.
Oh, it is red green.
Yeah.
Okay, I assumed when I heard Delirium, I'm like, oh, black green.
That's very true, but it's red green, and we'll get to his list here in a second. But yeah, just a very, very, very streamlined deck. Lots of good removal, lots of good creatures, value creatures. I'm surprised to only see one Den Protector. Like I understand that's a card that's been kind of like on the downtick. So I get why it's not as played anymore, but it just seems like a weird one to not play the full 4 of if you're wanting to get back cards out of your graveyard if you already have, lost a piece or whatever.
I don't know. I would almost cut it in favor of another Sylvan Advocate or another Tireless Tracker. Because, Tireless Tracker just draws you a million cards and becomes a huge threat on its own.
Yeah.
Sylvan Advocate, it's Baby Goyf. There's...
Yeah. So I'd be curious to see why he decided to cut,
it's just
down to 1. So
it seems like a really weird one of. I just don't feel like you're going to get the value that you want out of it because I don't want to.
It's not looping collector companies anymore.
Yeah, it's not.
It's just a pretty good, just marginal value card. So. Yeah. I love seeing Evolving Wilds as the fetch land of choice.
Yep.
I can remember when that card was standard when I was playing for the first time. I was playing 4 of them in some of my blue-black control decks. People thought I was crazy. They're like, "Why would you play this? It doesn't get you on the type plan." I'm like, "I'm just saying."
When did you start?
This was back in Scars block. So original blue-black control lists, Mana Leaks and Snapcasters. Like it was hard. To get your mana to work efficiently, and people were always like, "Why are you playing Evolving Wilds?" Or maybe it was a Terramorphing expansion. It was one of the two, but basically the same card. People were always asking me, "Why are you playing that?" I'm like, because I'm effectively running 56 cards, and you're playing 60. So
yeah, that's fair.
All right, so Louis Scott Vargas, his 3rd consecutive Pro Tour top 8.
Yep.
Awesome to see that. Playing Bant Company.
Very great Magic player. Just disappointed to see Bant Coco in the top 8. Which, it's not unexpected. We knew it was going to happen.
When you're one of the best, that's something that we've talked about the entire weekend. People were expecting him to show up with a cool deck, like all the rest of the Fireball guys, thinking he was going to be playing Team Murmur or something like that. But when you want to just go in and beat everybody who's playing the best deck, you just play the best deck better than everybody else. Yeah. And that's LSV to a T. And that rhymed. There's absolutely nothing interesting about this list. It's just the Tamiyo's in the sideboard. Apparently this is a huge card. I saw him play in his matches a couple times. This is the real deal.
Yeah,
card is absurd.
Tamiyo, I'm thinking that Tamiyo might eventually replace Avacyn in the main. The card just, when it lands, it buries people in card advantage.
And that's true. But like,
if she gets immediately removed, you're still drawing like two cards.
Well, what's going to happen is that once Collected Company rotates out, Tamiyo will just become the four of those in the main board. I don't think we're going to see Avacyn drop out of this. Like once
they just switch places. Like, because there are matchups where you want Avacyn instead of Tamiyo.
I always want Avacyn if I'm playing this.
But like if to merge and black-white control and the black-green delirium decks are the decks that Bant Coco has to deal with.
Yeah, and that's true.
Like if those are the best decks of the format, along with Bant Coco, then Avacyn isn't good enough.
I think you want both in the deck at that point. I'd be curious to see how he sideboarded, against those matchups. But I think it's like we'll see Tamiyo become a much bigger player once Company rotates out, and we won't probably see a Bant deck, and depending on what kind of the format looks like once we rotate, coming up here in a couple of months with Kaladesh coming out.
God knows what they'll put in Kaladesh.
Oh, probably not a 3-drop. That's stupid. Yeah. But we'll see. But for the time being, like Tamiyo, I think is regulated with the sideboard, and she's good there because she breaks up in the mirrors. I think.
But she does break up mirrors, but she's also good against black-white control. She's good against, basically everything that Avacyn's not good against, she's great against.
Yeah.
And all of the top decks beat Avacyn right now. Because, like, the main interaction with Avacyn right now that they want is to do the whole sack a Selfless Spirit and then, flip it, sack another Selfless Spirit.
Yeah.
And then your guys survive, their guys die. But if your opponent's team all has 4 toughness or more, doesn't matter.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll definitely see. Like, I like them both against the same deck, so I haven't played enough with the Bant Company. Like, I've only played it in testing with some people that were testing for regionals, and they both seemed fine.
Yeah.
So, but the decks we were testing against weren't the decks that showed up in the top 8. So let's see what else we got.
Don't you love it when that happens?
Well, it was Steven testing some of it, and Steven's always got a cool deck to show off, and so it's always neat to see what the best decks can do against a Steven deck, because Steven's decks are awesome.
Yes.
They're unconventional, but awesome.
I'd agree.
Yep. All right. Yuka Takahashi, Bant Company. Yep. Moving on. Yep. Ken Yukihiro, and this is the guy that Lucas Blowhand played in the quarterfinals that he was atrocious against, because this deck does one thing: ramp.
And load the graveyard. Don't forget load the graveyard.
And load the graveyard. Transverse. I mean, like, this deck only does one thing, and it's play a bunch of ramp spells and play Emrakul.
So, 2 things. Play ramp spells.
It wants to play Emrakul. It wants to play Emrakul. Like, that's what it wants to do. And I like these builds better than the rest of them because they can. Well, this one isn't playing. It's Reed Duke's list that we're going to get to here in a minute. That's actually going to show off what I think is the optimized version of this. Like, Red Green Up is good. Like, no doubt about that. This is a great way to build a ramp deck. It's so lean and linear that you just hit Ishkana and Emrakul and Chandra really fast, and you just start going to town. Awesome deck here. Love seeing it. It's Reed Duke's list, though. Red-Green Delirium Ramp. There are things I think this is the best ramp deck in the format right now. That might be controversial. I don't know. Because it's like along ramps. So you've got the Hadron Crawlers. We've got Uvenwald Hydra. Like, this came down against one of his opponents and killed them. Like, its card is nuts.
I gotta say,
it's only a 1-of, but
so
damn.
This is one of the lists where I actually watched some of the Pro Tour footage. And I think it was against Owen Turtenwald.
Yes,
drops the Emrakul, blows up his Hedron Archive with a World Breaker, recurs World Breaker, blows up some more of his lands, and just completely destroys his resources.
Yeah.
With this World Breaker just coming back. It was
Yeah, when this deck goes, it goes hard. And so, like, this is what I'm talking about here, where we have Grapple with the Past, putting Kozilek's Return to the graveyard, and being triggered by Emrakul, by World Breaker. Like, that's absurd power right there. Oh. And you can't counter the Kozilek Return.
Oh, it's something that's worth mentioning about Kozilek's Return, and it's another reason why I think Bant Coco is going to fall out a little bit, and why Avacyn isn't as good in this format right now, is Kozilek's Return's exile effect isn't a exile this card and then there's a trigger you can react to. Yeah, it's exile and 5 damage happens at the same time.
That's what I was just saying. You can't counter that going off anymore.
Yeah, you can't. Well, you can't. You can't only not counter it. You can't make your guys indestructible in response. You can't blink your guys in response. It's once that card's exiled, you've taken 5 damage.
Yeah.
So that makes it very hard to justify.
They can respond to it.
They cannot. We had some talks with some judges about this.
Well, you can't counter it.
No, but
you can still respond to it going off because there's punctuation in there that I thought would change the timing.
Apparently, what it is when they cast the card. So there's one point where you can interact with this card is before they've exiled the card. So it's like they've cast Elder Deep Fiend or Emrakul or whatever.
Well, yeah.
And then you can be like, sack myself a spirit. And then they just don't exile the card from the graveyard.
Yeah.
And then they cast it again.
Yeah, and it gets around it, obviously. But it's still not, like, you just can't counter it, which is the big one.
Well, like I said, you can't, once that card has left the graveyard, you can't interact with it anymore.
Right.
So
I would have thought that you could still cast an Avacyn in response to it going off.
No, you can't cast the Avacyn.
Huh.
Yeah. I thought it was really weird.
That's strange.
I was surprised to find that ruling out. But that was...
Oh, well.
I saw that done by a judge, and then the judge makes the wrong call, get appealed, and then, the appeal was like, nope, once this is out of the graveyard, it's gone off. And,
yeah.
I don't know. The card's a giant block of text.
I'm gonna have to ask it because that reads really strangely. It's not being cast. I know that much. Mm-hmm. I would still think that you could respond to it going off.
Yeah, you would think there would be an additional trigger there, but from what I've been told by judges, plural, is that it does not create an additional trigger for you to respond to.
That makes sense.
The trigger is them having the ability to exile.
To exile it at that point.
And
okay, so that makes sense. Okay, that makes sense then. Yeah, that's card's weird.
Yeah, the card is weird.
But that's what it's there for. It's like taking advantage of interactions like that is what makes good players good.
Yeah.
So all kinds of other fun things here too.
Don't sack your Selfless Spirit in response to them taking the Kozilek's Return out of the graveyard. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, you can still sack it.
Well, he's going to be dead anyways.
Right. They can still sack it to you casting the creature to attempt to exile, and that gives you a turn.
Yeah.
And they have to have another 7-drop to cast on the next turn. So it buys you some time, I guess. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's a crazy way to get around the ability to cast it again. That's a really cool interaction there. I like it a lot. So yeah, I think this is the best ramp deck in the format, hands down, bar none. Mm-hmm. All right, moving on, we have the very last deck in the top 8. We have another Temur Emerge deck. Very different from what Owen Turnwall played. Is not playing Emrakul, tops out at Elder Deep Fiend, and his whole game plan is pretty much just to
Deep Fiend you out of the game.
Yeah, which is pretty good.
I thought the inclusion of the Lashweed Lurker was definitely interesting. However, I think that...
Nuts.
However, I think if you've got to choose between Emrakul and Lashweed Lurker, you pick the Emrakul.
Right. The only thing here is that he just can't power the Emrakul out fast.
Yeah.
There's just no way to do it with this deck. So he's on a very different plane, and he wants to cast Wretched Gryphs and Elder Deep Fiends. He wants to go a slightly different direction.
Yeah,
and that's totally fine.
He's more of Value Town, I guess what I would call it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think the other to merge list is a lot better. I mean, obviously he placed higher.
Yeah. I mean, they both made top 8 of a Pro Tour. That's nothing to
both were impressive.
Yeah.
Don't not knocking Andrew here for his deck building choices. He's clearly better at Magic than I am.
He's on the Pro Tour.
Yeah.
So, just very different decks. I love that he's got Shaman of Forgotten Ways here. Like, that card is awesome.
Yeah. I did not know what that card was until I was looking at his list.
Yeah. So, do you know what his ability is, the formidable ability is? Not what the abilities reads, but do you know what that spell actually reads?
What?
So it's Biorhythm is the spell.
Okay.
A card that's actually banned in Commander. Because these green decks will put a creature out and ramp into it and kill the board because nobody has any creatures in play. It's actually banned in Commander.
That's funny.
And everyone was like, oh my god, they have to ban Shaman in Commander because it biorhythms. Woo! Nobody cares.
It's Commander, guys.
It's Commander. Nobody cares about Commander. So, yeah, that was our top 8. Really, really cool. And again, Lucas Blohan taking it down with Black Control. Never would have guessed. So, that's pretty sweet. And again, this was a huge breakout weekend for Liliana and Emrakul. We got to see the fight for Innistrad take place effectively on Innistrad. Super cool.
And if you can find any Pro Tour footage of someone casting an Emrakul, with the exception of a game where LSV manages to fight through two Emrakuls. The game, generally speaking, the game had just ended.
Yeah.
And in the coolest way possible. There were so many cool interactions with Emrakul being like, let me take your hand. Let me see what you have.
Yep.
Let me screw you over with your own game plan. Ha ha ha.
Did you see somebody actually lost a game with their Emrakul during the turn that they were taking of their opponents? Did you see that happen?
I did not.
All right, so here's what went down. His opponent has Zombie, Kalidas, and Addison in play. And he goes, all right, I'm going to cast Emrakul. And his opponent goes, okay, cool. I'm going to sacrifice the Zombie to Kalidas. Upkeep, Addison trigger. What life are you at? Oh, you're at 3?
Oh my gosh. That's hilarious.
I believe it was Lucas Blohan who actually pulled it off too. Kill the guy in the turn that he was going to lose to his opponent taking his turn.
Other than some corner cases...
that's not a corner case. His opponent was an idiot at that point.
Yeah.
Wanted to cast the Emrakul at that point.
Yeah, no, what I'm saying is words.
To cast the Emrakul is to win the game.
Yeah.
I believe that 100%.
Yeah, I can think of 2 recorded footage on the Pro Tour where Emrakul didn't win the game.
Yeah.
Within 1 to 2 turns after it was cast.
Yep. It's just a big old dude. And it's awesome. To cast it is to win the game, I think. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Breakout weekend for Liliana and Emrakul. We'll see what happens with Sinner moving forward because this is actually the end of the 2016 Pro Tour circuit. Next week, things kick off again for next year. So we'll see where things go from there. So yeah, other things to talk about.
A collected company goes away soon?
Oh yeah, there's that. There's a new Magic set coming out in a couple of weeks at the end of the month. Right. There's a conspiracy afoot, guys. Call the Scooby Squad. So
snap.
Conspiracy to Take the Crown comes out next week. Now, did you get to play any conspiracy drafts when you first came around?
No, but I have seen the cards.
It's boring.
But what I'm told is that the draft part of Conspiracy
is the best part.
Is fantastic. The
playing is a little subjective because you've got to have...
You have to like Commander.
Yeah, if you're not a fan of political games and multiplayer games, you're probably not going to enjoy a Conspiracy game so much. Now, if you actually just get to draft it, it's the best thing ever because you are manipulating packs, you're pulling cards from your picks into the packs and trading them out for cards in the packs. You're taking entire packs. You're getting pre-game effects like the ley lines. It's so much fun.
No, all of that stuff looked really cool. And I've been trying to do a conspiracy draft because of it, but then everyone tells me how awful the game is.
Yeah.
So what I've been trying to get together is get 8 conspiracy packs and then 2 of, some other pack.
So 10 packs. I'm following your math so far.
No, 1 conspiracy, and then 2 of, so each person gets 1 conspiracy and 2 packs of another set.
Okay.
Yeah, and then play it the draft, you have the conspiracies, which is all exciting, and then gameplay-wise, instead of doing the multiplayer, you do, standard draft, 3 rounds.
Well, that's just the best way to do and I did do this once. I drafted Conspiracy, and we decided as a pod to just do 1v1.
Okay.
And just have the vote mechanics just work as they were, because we're just we don't want to have to deal with 4-person games, because we know that people at this table who will screw people over. And that's not cool. Aside. Boom! New Planeswalker!
Oh, snap! She assassinates ghosts.
So, last time around we had Doc Faden, the greatest thief in the multiverse. The greatest thief in the multiverse. Come to us from Conspiracy, also reprinted in Eternal Masters. That card has seen vintage play. This one won't.
This one won't, and it's a shame that it's going to skip over formats where you might actually see her come into play, because she has a lot of cool effects on her. She has a very interesting interaction with her loyalty points, with her +0 ability, returning her back to 5.
Yeah. So let's break her down real quick then. So this is Kaya the Ghost Assassin. She's a Ghostbuster, apparently.
Yep.
So she's 2, a white and a black for Planeswalker Kaya, 5 loyalty. 0 is to exile Kaya or up to 1 target creature. I thought it read both. Creature and her. That would have been nuts.
Took a few read-throughs.
Yeah. And you return that card to the battlefield under its control beginning of your next upkeep. So that creature is gone for a full turn cycle. And you lose 2 life. Whatever. -1, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. That's something to scoff at. -2, each opponent discards a card and you draw a card. And she's got 5 loyalty. Fortunately and unfortunately, with sets like Conspiracy, they have realized that they can create Planeswalkers, and also the commander exclusive ones that were you can be your commanders. That this is a multiplayer Planeswalker, which is actually pretty sweet. And now that the Wizards is kind of deciding, we can do this, that's going to open up all the design space for Planeswalkers. I don't think we'd ever see something like this in a standard set. I don't think we will.
There are Planeswalkers that say each opponent on them, and I think it's primarily for getting around hexproof and Leyline of Sanctity, things like that.
Well,
rather than for actual multiplayer intentions.
Right. It's the way that she doesn't have the typical Planeswalker build. She doesn't have a plus, she doesn't have a minus, and an ultimate. She doesn't follow the typical. Yeah. So she's been built to play in a multiplayer arena. Most of the Planeswalkers don't do that.
That's fair.
And obviously there are ones that do say target opponent, each opponent, but there aren't any that are actually designed to specifically play towards multiplayer, which she definitely is, and I think that's super cool. I wish they had made the text on her second and third abilities a little bit bigger, so they didn't have those massive gaps in the card. But that's just me nitpicking.
Yeah. And this card, if it was ever introduced into Standard, would see Standard play.
Oh, easily. Yeah.
Part of me says that Modern would also see some play.
What?
Part of me.
What deck is playing this in Modern?
It would be something fringe.
Like what? I have no idea what you're...
No, I'm just this card does powerful things.
Yeah, it does powerful things, yeah.
And I could see there being a deck built around it. Probably not your tier 1 decks. We're talking tier 2, 2.5. But it might see something show up here and there. But we're never going to see this card in Legacy or Vintage. So this card's sole purpose is to exist within Conspiracy drafts. Yeah. Which is an unfortunate thing for a breakout new Planeswalker. And I'm sure we'll also see some social justice warriors complain about the fact that they finally introduce a racially diverse Planeswalker and it's going to exist in a very limited.
Have you not seen some of these planeswalkers? Like they're a racially diverse bunch. Like well,
white, Greek, white, vampire.
Cat.
Yeah.
Snake lady.
So you were saying
dragon. And Gideon's kind of, Middle Eastern. So, like...
He's Greek. He's Mediterranean.
Right.
Like, whatever.
It is cool. We haven't seen a main character like Kaya here who is, racially diverse. And that's a really cool thing that she's showing up as, like, the poster child of this set.
Yeah, no. And, like, she sets the whole story in motion if you follow the story. I couldn't
care less about the story. This is the guy that understands the story of Mind's Desire. If you listen to last week's episode.
Yeah, I like reading.
The stories are pretty cool.
I do really hope that she shows up in another set in the future.
Look at that art.
Yeah.
Just like...
What I'm talking about right there. setting the story of the set into motion. But yeah, I would really like to see her show up on Innistrad. That's the Temple Guard. She is actually holding Brago's sword. Did I say Temple Guard? I apologize. She's the captain of the guard. And when Kaya assassinates Brago, his sword and breastplate and crown became corporal.
Empty throne.
Well, if you see the roses, there was a card in the old conspiracy set. I can't remember her first name because I'm terrible.
Marchesa?
Yes, Marchesa, the Black Rose.
Yep.
She's now taken over, and the captain of the guard has, if you scroll up, convinced Sylvana, scroll back down.
Oh, this chick?
Yeah, Sylvana to be the leader of the resistance. Basically, they've agreed that you can no longer have a tyranny in the city because it just keeps happening over and over again.
But that's
he gets put in place.
That's what Grixis is about. Tyranny and destruction. Why you gotta get the Black Rose down, man?
Because I'm a terrible person.
Why you gotta hate the Black Rose?
Because I like freedom. In America.
But Grixis!
But Celestia.
New Planeswalker!
Yay!
So, she's cool.
Mm-hmm.
She is... It is unfortunate that they put new cards like this in sets like this, but it's the place for new cards like this. But I do agree, I hope that we see her on a plane at some point in the future.
I would love to go back to Innistrad and she's there. Ghost busting.
She ain't afraid of no ghost.
There's something strange in the neighborhood. Who are you gonna call?
Kaya!
Ghost Assassin!
I like how she... Okay, so my theory is that she's also part of the Assassin's Creed universe. Because you look at that blade on her wrist, that's a hidden blade.
Yeah.
Or that's either a dagger because she's kind of going to the throat with Brago there. So
it's not a hidden dagger. She wears them on her forearm right here. It's called a Ronchel dagger, I believe.
Okay. So New Planeswalker. How do you know these? Is it in the story?
It is. It is in the story.
Oh my gosh. Alright, anyway. So yeah, New Planeswalker coming out. This was the first Conspiracy card spoiled. We'll have the full set out, I imagine, by the end of next week because the release for Conspiracy is at the end of this month.
Really?
If I'm not mistaken.
I didn't
very, very
realize
soon.
It was coming that soon.
Well, yeah. They gotta spoil the whole set. I thought the whole set was out today. They spoiled it, but...
Oh.
So that's super cool. Like, it's cool seeing new Planeswalkers. I think she's neat.
Yes.
Super cool. Go Kaya. Last thing for tonight's agenda. The announcement of the 2017 Grand Prix schedule was made earlier this week, and that's not very exciting. Except...
for San Antonio GP Team Modern.
Yeah. So, if you've ever watched the World Magic Cup, have you watched World Magic Cup before, Justin?
No.
Okay, so basically, you have a part of the competition that is Team Unified Standard, which is basically standard with 3 teammates, and you have to build 3 decks. The catch is that you cannot have 4 of a copy. Well, you can have 4 of a copy, but of a card, but you have to have
split
those
between 3 decks.
Between 3 decks, so you can either have all of it in one deck or split across all 3 decks, depending on how your decks are built out. And so that's what they're doing with Team Unified Modern, essentially.
And I am so excited about this.
It's a really cool idea.
It really is.
Even though it means absolutely nothing. This is this is my opinion of it. Mm-hmm. Modern is a diverse enough format that it doesn't actually matter. There's only so much overlap between certain decks. There are a couple cards like Lightning Bolt,
fetch lands.
Fetch lands are if you play, so you can play like Storm, Jeskai Nahiri, and Jund.
So we're playing Storm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like Ad Nauseam Storm.
Okay.
Which needs no fetch lands. Like there are some deck building constraints. You just can't throw all your eggs in one basket. But there's ways of playing these decks. So like Lightning Bolt is the card that kind of keeps popping up. So what do you do with it? Let's say you have Jeskai Nahiri and Jund. You don't play any Lightning Bolts in Jund. You put them on Jeskai Nahiri and give Jund all of the Burst Lightnings, the Sudden Shocks, and the Seal of Fires. Mm-hmm. So the decks still play relatively similar to each other. It feels like a real gimmick of a tournament format, but it is also a great way to bring your friends together and have a great tournament experience, because Justin and I can be sitting with another buddy of ours and like, oh shoot, Justin, watch out, he might have this card in his sideboard. Be thinking about that, or hey, make sure you see this play right there, or hey, do the same thing for me. It's a great idea, and if it's successful, I can see them doing more of this.
Yeah,
because it's awesome.
Someone for a while was insisting to me that Team Unified Modern, because of the variety, would be like, if you had 1 copy of Path to Exile, no one can have any copies of Path to Exile.
No.
Which,
unless the rules have changed.
Yeah, I don't think that's the case. They haven't made an indication
that they have.
I don't think that's the case, but that's what someone told me. For Modern, specifically.
Yeah.
I have not been able to find anything supporting that, but that might be a way that if they do change the rules for Team Unified to make it harder for deck building constraints.
Yeah. I really think that it's just a way to bring some friends together and have them play as a team, and if you have to share some cards across your 2 decks, you only get 2 Path and 2 Bolts.
Yeah.
Like, it's not the end of the world. Like,
I'm very excited about this format.
Yeah.
I can't wait to roll up with a couple buddies and, take the tournament as a team instead of, every man for himself, where you're like, I hope you do well, but if we play against each other, I'm going to destroy you.
Yeah, and I've done it before. I've put in PPT or PTQs back in the old days where I've knocked friends out of contention. Like that feels
it doesn't feel good.
Crappy, yeah.
But at the same time, are you going to sabotage your chances for the most?
Of course not. No. I will say that I've played in one team event in my life, and that was with Sean and James. We played in GP Nashville, Khans of Tarkir Sealed. The best time I've ever had playing Magic in my life. Like, we didn't do great, but it was amazing getting to sit with 2 very good Magic players and myself and get to play games against other teams. It was so much fun. So it's going to be sweet. Now, there is one more little noteworthy weekend next year, and that's Triple GP weekend in Las Vegas.
Gosh, I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get there.
Well, I've missed all previous Las Vegas GPs for Modern Masters, which brings me to my next point. I don't think it's actually Legacy, Modern, and Standard, because right now they're saying that it's going to be. It starts on the 14th of June and goes Legacy, Modern, or no, Legacy, Standard, Modern. Like that's the lineup of it. So you can't day 2 all of them. You have to pick 2 if you want to day 2 of them. My thought is that they know how big the last GP in Vegas was, the largest card tournament in the history of forever. It's actually Modern Masters 3.
That would be cool.
All right? And they've realized, because last time it was 2 GPs that they had to build up and run. So we'll just make it start in the middle of the week and just run it all freaking weekend. How sweet would that be?
Yeah.
Think about it. It's true. So that's my tinfoil hat conspiracy right now. Huh? Get it? Kaya conspiracy?
He did a thing.
That's my theory right now, is that we're actually just going to get triple GPs of Modern Masters 3 next year and that weekend. And if I'm right, awesome. If I'm wrong, it's still Vegas. I get to go play a Modern GP in Vegas and go gamble.
Yeah, I have my doubts on what he's saying, but
It's real.
I'm very excited about Las Vegas. Don't know how I'm getting there yet. Gonna find a way.
On a plane?
Well, yeah.
So it's more the logistics of how to get there, not the actual getting there.
But buying the ticket with the money from the job after the taxes and the insurance and et cetera, et cetera.
You just get on a bus.
So, but then I've got to get back at a certain time so I can get to that job, and I don't want to sit on. No one wants to sit on a bus for 18 hours.
I've done it before.
If I'm not flying, I'm not going.
Wow, this guy over here.
I know. I'm bougie.
Coach all the way. No legroom. No peanuts. Yeah. So that's another week in the world of Magic. Mm-hmm. Next week, if you listen to last week's episode, you will know that we are doing our first live brewing episode. Sean had this brilliant idea. Well, if you didn't listen to it, I'll break it down for you really quickly. We're going to take a card, and this next week is going to be Bedlam Reveler, and then design a deck around it in a format. So we picked Modern for Bedlam Reveler. So we're going to come together next week with a list of cards from each of us and build a deck in real time, I should say, that plays Bedlam Reveler in Modern. And this is to get you guys sort of like thinking about, what can we do next week? Mm-hmm. Actually, next month, I'm sorry. The second week of every month, we're going to do one of these episodes where you guys can submit a card and a format and a constraint of some kind. So if you want to put like a deck building restriction on it, you can do that.
But it needs to be a reasonable restriction.
Yeah, reasonable restrictions, obviously. And you're going to see us build the deck for you guys. So if you want to see Grim Flayer in Modern or whatever, we'll do it. If you want to see Splendid or Blessed, what's the Reclamation card? Return all lands from the graveyard to the battlefield.
Nisa's Splendid something or another. I don't know.
All lands come back into play. So you know Aaron, right, from Legends?
I've met him.
So he was. He's
Affleck guy, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Monday before the draft started, he was testing his new Modern deck against me. That was playing 4 of those in the main deck because it's a Valakut deck. It's Dredge that Valakuts you.
That's weird.
I'll put all the lands into play and kill you. Except I had Cryptic Commands and Mana Leaks and spells and like all the Mana Leaks in the world. Like, it was great. It didn't actually work, and that deck doesn't operate when Emrakul goes. Get you. Anyway, Splendid Reclamation, I think is what the card's called. Blessed Reclamation. Reclamation.
I'm pretty sure it says Splendid in the word somewhere.
Like Splenda?
Yep.
Oh, whatever. Anyway.
It's a diet. It's a diet card.
And then you gorge yourself on one meal, like one big meal, and that's all you get to have.
We should ask Sean if that's a healthy way to diet. Starve yourself for a week and then one big meal a week?
I can tell you it's a terrible idea.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I knew people in college that would do that because they just didn't have time to eat. So
that sounds like a terrible idea.
Bad idea. Bad suggestions. Don't listen to this guy at all.
You should play Lightning Strike in Modern. You said bad suggestions.
That's a very bad suggestion. So that's what we're going to be doing every month. We're going to do a new episode where you get to give us a card and the format. So make sure if you're check Twitter. Check the Facebook group and all that good stuff to make sure that you are submitting your cards and all that, and it's going to be great. And we're going to try and flex our brewing muscles and really come up with something cool for you guys that's not just Bedlam Reveler 4 Lightning Bolts and Snapcaster Mages. Like, that's boring.
Looking forward to some Bedlam brews.
I have mine.
You're not supposed to have 60 cards, yo.
I have a list of cards.
Okay.
Many cards, actually. Anyway.
I have a few ideas.
So that's going to be for next week. And then whatever else happens next week in the world of Magic, we'll talk about that probably for 5 minutes. But yeah. Big thanks to Justin for showing up. I was really afraid the camera was going to be pointing that way on the camera, but the world of live recording is fun. So this guy for showing up.
Yeah.
Thanks, sir.
This guy for having me.
It's my show. I do what I want. But yeah, make sure you guys are checking us out on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube and Twitch. All that good stuff. Lots of fun content out there. And make sure you guys are checking out next week for the Bedlam episode and everything else going on. And get ready for a conspiracy. See you next time, guys.
Later.